This year was a really terrible year for Nintendo, right? A terrible year for gaming in general, but as a Nintendo fan, it's really odd looking back and seeing just how weak the year was in general. Like, nothing good has come out. There's been a couple of standout titles, Princess Peach Showtime, Unicorn Overlord, Super Monkey Ball, Banana Rumble, but for the most part, everything that's come out has been a disappointment or just non-existent, right? There have been long periods of time where nothing of note has released. And a big part of that is like the incompetency of the third parties because this really should be a period of time in which the third parties are on board with the Switch. They're putting out like all these games on it. Like they should be there doing things like basically every week, right? But instead, they're throwing everything they have at the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, trying to make them popular and trying to keep them relevant. And it's just not going to work because they're just never going to compete with what Nintendo is doing. And even this year, that's been very evident that even though there have been no games for Nintendo this year, they're still dominating the competition. Now, the narrative has been that this is the end of the Switch life cycle. This is it. Nintendo's preparing to release the next console, and to a certain extent, that is true. But now that we've gotten far enough into the year, now that we know a little bit about what's coming out in the future, now that we know like what's coming out in 2025, now that we've seen announcements for games like Atelier Yumiya, Professor Layton, that Deca Police. Now that we've seen like Metroid Prime 4, now now that we've seen like just kind of the fact that we still have a Nintendo Direct that could come out in the foreseeable future, right? The simple fact of the matter is 2025 already looks way more loaded than 2024, right? 2024 kind of reminds me of 2018, where it's an off year in an absolute banger console generation, right? Where we're just not getting as much great games, as many great games, but then the following years we get absolute bangers. 2018 was followed by 2019, in which we got one of my favorite games ever, Fire Emblem Three Houses. So if you really stop to think about it, like when you really look at like the cope in regards to games like Pokemon Legends ZA or Metroid Prime 4, you always see the same thing. Like, oh, those games are going to be cross generation. Oh, they're going to release on both the Switch and the Switch 2, which first of all doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to do that because that would like cannibalize Switch 2 sales, which by the way is what people want to happen. Like the reason they're so adamant about the Switch 2 coming out now, is that they want the Switch to fail and they're hoping the next Nintendo console will do it. And that the next Nintendo console won't be as relevant or popular as the original Switch, right? They're hoping that the console is going to fail, which is why like everybody like constantly gets fired up about Switch 2 while consistently ignoring all of the games that come out. Like Princess Peach Showtime, like Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, Unicorn Overlord, Echoes of Wisdom, Mario and Luigi, all of which are absolute bangers, but like, oh, they're not on Switch 2, so they don't matter. Again, we've been seeing this a lot lately, but uh, right now we're seeing this cope session where people are in denial about the fact that Nintendo Switch is not getting a replace anytime soon, right? This has been a thing for like the past several years now, but people really have got it into their heads that like the Switch is going to be replaced by like next year, right? And I was looking at the release schedule and I kind of realized that it doesn't make any sense. If the Switch 2 is coming out next year, it's going to be late next year, right? It's not going to be in the summer. It's not going to be like uh we have like plenty of games coming confirmed coming out for like March 2025, right? For Switch. So to me, that just strongly indicates that the next Nintendo console at the very least is a year away, which means that we are going to get like several new releases for the Nintendo Switch, several of which have been confirmed, and people are in denial and coping about it, right? Because they know that if the Switch continues along the pace that it has been, that within another year of relevancy, it will 100% outpace the PS2. Now, right now, Sony's doing this weird thing where they're trying to like deny this, right? The Snoys have been like, I've been saying the Switch is going to outperform the PS2 since like before it came out, but Snoys are doing this thing where they're just like the PS2 is unstoppable. It's the greatest console ever, right? It hasn't sold any units at all in the past 10 years, and yet it's still outselling other platforms because Sony keeps like subtly raising the total units sold number. Like again, Sony lied about the sales of the PS2 to begin with, right? So the fact that like Nintendo outperformed the PS2 so handedly with the Switch kind of demonstrates just that Sony has never been that viable of a competitor. And that's starting to become more and more transparent to Nintendo fans, right? When you see the gaming media freak out over Astrobot, like, oh, we've never seen a game like this before, when it's just a basic like uh Mario game, right? When you look at like how people freak out over like The Last of Us, oh, it's the greatest story ever told. Like when you see just how the corpos and game journos do everything in their power to like religiously prop up the PlayStation and Xbox while downplaying Nintendo games, right? When you really look at that, you really start to understand just how we got into this position to begin with, right? Again, I'm tired of going on like some rando YouTube channel and uh having some pizza face retard try and tell me that like, oh, the N64 was a failure of a console. Like nobody liked that controller. When everybody I knew had one, people were playing those things years after they stopped being made, right? Like it's an iconic brand, right? And you're seriously gonna sit there and tell me that like, well, PlayStation was better. Look at how many like game journals said it was. Like, oh, DK64 was a bomb when it's like one of the most popular games on the system, right? Like, like people keep insisting that like, oh, GoldenEye was overrated. Like nobody likes that. Like it's one of the most popular FPS games ever made, right? Again, this really can't be emphasized enough, but the people who constantly go after Nintendo games are not doing so out of some like genuine concern for the company or genuine interest in video games. They are coming after them in order to downplay the brand and downplay what the company is doing. Make no mistake, the reason why the Review Tech USA's and the Game Explains of the world are so obsessed with the next upcoming Nintendo console is because they don't play video games and they don't care about the stuff that's available now, right? That has been very prevalent for the past several years, and it really needs to be acknowledged, right? It is embarrassing how we're going into like Echoes of Wisdom and Mario and Luigi and seeing like so many people make content like trying to talk down to them. Right. I saw a lot of this in regards to like Echoes of Wisdom in particular. I've seen like all sorts of crazy copes, like in regards to the menu system, the fact you play as Zelda, the magic system, right? The way combat works, right? I've seen like the dungeon design. Like I've seen so many crazy copes like trying to make this game out to be terrible when like it really looks amazing in every sense of the word. But again, we constantly go through these motions of these games coming out and people just crying about them because of the art style, because of the mechanics, because they're not exactly like older games, right? Like, why aren't they like GTA? Like, why aren't they like Skyrim? Like, we keep hearing this from fanboys, and the instant Nintendo like delivers, right? The instant they put out something like Breath of the Wild, which is better than Skyrim in every way, shape, and form, like you don't see these people acknowledge it, right? Because Nintendo fans never bothered with Skyrim to begin with because we knew that it wouldn't stand up to the test of time, right? We knew Skyrim long term would never be relevant, And yet here we are, like several years later, right, with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, both of which are better than anything the Elder Scrolls has ever done, right? And I imagine most Elder Scroll fans don't even realize that like Zelda exists, right? That it's better than their game. It's like how you're growing up, right? Remember when we were growing up and like you would discover One Piece? This is what happened to me. I discovered One Piece, right? And I'm just trying to like talk about it to other people. And people are just like, "Oh, what is that? What even is that? I've never heard of that." So instead of actually like learning about the show, watching the show, realizing what made it so great. We had this like weird delusional period of time where people would cry and deny that this show was as good as like you said it was, right? And it would get to the point where like you wouldn't talk about it at all. And then out of nowhere, like the series becomes popular around in America around the time like Dressrosa came out, right? In the manga, 2012, right? Like the manga suddenly explodes in popularity, right? And suddenly like a lot of these people are just like, "Oh, One Piece, it's my favorite thing." Like, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. You were never there. Like again, you're just a again, this is the issue when it comes to Nintendo, right? Is that people religiously keep downplaying the brand because they don't know anything about it. They don't play the games. They don't respect the developers. They don't respect the fans. They'll do anything they possibly can to keep up the narrative that Nintendo is coming in behind PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, right? They'll do anything. And the way it looks now is that like I don't think the vast majority of these people are going to change, right? What's really going to happen is that younger people are going to come in, realize that like the narrative in regards to like PC gaming is completely and totally fake, right? Again, let's be real here about the real reason why like gaming PC is like so popular, like among like younger people. It's because gaming YouTubers who don't know what they're talking about will try and tell you that gaming PCs are superior because like, oh, you can pirate on them. Like, no, like that's illegal. Like, oh, but you can do it anyway. Don't support those corpos, man. But give me money. Like it's like, come on. Like, unbelievable. It's disgusting. It really is. But it's not gonna last. I do think this is gonna be the thing. I do think like as piracy gets cracked down on, as Nintendo games like grow and grow in scope, as like new Bethesda games take longer and longer to come out to more middling results, right? I think as more and more people play the Echoes of Wisdoms, the Mario and Luigi's, the the Metroid Prime 4s, like it's going to become more and more obvious that Nintendo is superior. And there's just nothing, absolutely nothing that the Pretendos can do to stop it.